So I'm going to invite all our speakers back now for our Q&A. As a reminder, if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat if you have not already. I'm going to start off with I'll start off with a question for Kearni specifically. Do you think that trash burning is getting enough attention, especially as an environmental justice issue? And if not, how can we bring more attention to this issue? And kind of with that, are decision makers engaged in this issue?
Thank you for that question. I do believe this time now there has been a lot of attention to incineration, but the movement, the community members, our allies can definitely always use support. As many of the speakers said today, it's all about us coming together and joining together. We have had a lot of wins just over the past year within my county, as well as around the country. My organization supports national action and advocacy community groups to fight dirty energy and dirty industries, including incineration. And so most recently, we actually assisted a community in Connecticut to shutting down their incinerator. So with all of the wins, we have to celebrate the small victories that we achieve. And we are one step closer to ending incineration here in Chester. Like I said, we are surrounded by 5 incinerators, 1 in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, here in Chester, and 3 in New Jersey, right over the bridge from where I live in Camden, New Jersey. So yes, we can always use as much support as we can get. I can put my contact information back in the chat. Please email me. If you want to get involved, maybe where you're located, we can also join forces to fight to see if there are harmful communities in your area as well.
Thank you so much for that. This next one is for Robin. This is I believe a clarification question from earlier in your presentation. They were asking about unincorporated areas such as townships, and if that differs. If someone wrote this question, feel free to correct me if I'm understanding wrong, but if that differs differently in terms of the regulations of what you're able to do in your own township.
Yeah, absolutely. So if by unincorporated, we mean like municipalities, township boroughs that don't have their own zoning, then they default to what the county zoning code is typically. And then even there, for those communities, there could be various ways that we can address oil and gas development if it isn't spelled out in their county-wide zoning plan as well. And if anybody has any specific questions, if they think that that's a scenario that applies to their community, I'd love to put my contact information in the chat as well, and we can have a conversation about how to best help out.
Thanks, Robin. This next question applies to both Wesley and Laura. People were curious if you have worked at all with any state legislators around your community's concerns or any news media.
Yes, actually, we have talked to state level legislation, state representative. We've talked to senators, congressmen about the situation. They've actually come out and spoken to me on several different occasions. And unfortunately, it was still all for naught. The landslide that I had mentioned earlier was going to cost us anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million to get that landslide repaired and the road restored. And we were simply told there were no funds available.
And for us, we have been working with the legislature and with the government in terms of getting our concerns addressed, but it's been a long process and they've been working really slow in terms of granting us what we're asking for, and specifically because the refinery is one of the biggest impact resources and funds in our community, and so it's kind of hard to work against them. but we're working, we keep fighting for it, we keep advocating and involving the community so that they do eventually get to the point where they can actually work with us at a level that we can live safely in our community.
Thank you both. And that kind of leads to this next question, which I think any of you can answer. But what are some of the biggest obstacles you think you face in terms of getting residents involved or informed or active? Is volunteer bandwidth an issue that any of you face?
I can answer that for my community. One of the biggest obstacles for my community is connecting the dots. And that's why I started my presentation about connecting the dots between environmental justice, health disparities, and our daily lives, because with so many people, they're just concerned about going to work, putting food on their table, taking care of their children, putting gas in the car, that when you use terms or environmental justice, they hear it and they understand that there's something wrong and it needs to change, but they're not connecting it to their daily lives. So if you say your child has asthma, they may understand it, but not fully. But if you say, well, you know what, it's causing your child to miss school, and that's why they have asthma, and that's why you are having these nosebleeds, and that's why you're getting sick. Connecting it, and also de-siloing environmental justice as far as connecting it to our everyday lives in certain communities, because our environment it's our living space. When I walk out of my door, do I feel safe? That's an environmental issue. When I walk out of my door, am I inspired? Are there green spaces? Do I have access to quality food? Do I have access to safe and secure housing? All of those factors impact our public health, our mental health. And so we have to begin to connect those dots to not just speak of environmental justice as clean air, clean water, but how does environmental injustice result in cumulative health impacts?
Also, I want to touch on something Kearni was speaking of earlier, and that is, with a lot of these well pads, there are particulates that get released into the air. Some can be easily seen, some can be easily smelt, and others are virtually undetectable. One of the impacts of my own granddaughter was intense headaches and nosebleeds. Her father suffered from intense headaches. Some of my granddaughter's friends suffered from nosebleeds, headaches, and a lot of aches in their bones, which we could directly contribute to the pad being there, and a lot of things that we've seen. As for me being a former council member, it was hard to get people motivated to really speak up until the impacts were felt. And at that point, it was too late. To try and rally people together, a lot felt that because I was their representative, their borough councilman, that my voice alone was enough. And unfortunately, it was not.
And I'll just add to that. Also, when you have communities that may not be frontline communities, it's so easy to say out of sight, out of mind. It's happening to them over there. I don't really have to worry about it. But when you think about, when it comes to incineration, we don't think about what happens to our trash when we throw our trash in a trash can. There's a process. And as I said before during the presentation, air pollution is not stagnant. So the wind blows. So we're all responsible for keeping each other safe. And what I have began to do to try to get more community involved in a creative solution, I've been hosting environmental justice, connecting the dots events where I'm bringing, I say I'm bridging the gap their cross-state connections, bridging the gap so that different communities and people can understand the views of all of our neighbors, because what may be important to me may not be important to another person, but it's very important for the both of us to understand why we have different sets of priorities.
And that is absolutely correct. Being able as a council member to get as much information as I could for the residents, being able to gather as much material as I could, taking tours to different sites, taking time out to go and visit other council members in other townships. That information was really vital in us making an informed and accurate decision, and being able to bring that to the residents and let them know what was going on. With the Environmental Health Project, we went out with the Clean Air Council, and while we were out on tour, I learned that they had equipment that could actually show us what particulates were actually in the air. And as we watched particulates, I noted that there was a town just below where this mist was. Now, the particulates that were in the air could be visibly seen through this imaging machine they had. And what was unique is at the day that we actually saw it, we were fortunate and disfortunate at the same time to witness a leak that they had, and the wind carried it over hundreds of miles. It's easy to see and it's easy to say, but to deliver it for people to take action, it's kind of no effect.
Just one last thing I'd like to say, echoing everything Wesley and Kearni had said, but on the subject of volunteer bandwidth, what made the campaign in Allegheny County successful, but was still quite uphill, is between everybody having lives and their own ailments, and we still are in the midst of a pandemic. A lot of people were either nervous to be in public, understandably, or that wasn't their thing. What contributed to our success was to have multiple ways for people to be involved and to stay involved, and to let them know that if they didn't have time to feel free to pass the baton, per se. Some people wanted to be out there canvassing and door knocking. Some people wanted to be doing public comment or phone banking or doing texting campaigns or doing, there's the fancy term relational organizing, but really reaching out to family members and having those conversations so that what could be taken care of at home for themselves and their family came first, and to make sure that they could still be a part of this collective effort to protect something. So the more the variety, the better. The more tactics you have to have outreach, and like Kearni say, like educational programs, everything like that, to make it accessible and inviting as possible, really made this a success, and it was able to draw a lot of volunteer work.
For me, our community involvement was difficult at first, specifically because what was said earlier in terms of out of sight, out of mind. You can complain or be concerned about water quality because you drink it every day and you pay for it, but with the air you're breathing it already. And so it took a while for us to get our community involved and understanding that what's important is that this, even though they can't really see it, but if they're breathing it, it's hazardous to their health, and they can see it because they know, everybody in our community knows someone who has suffered from asthma, cancer, headaches, migraines, nosebleeds. And so it's not something that they make that connection right away, but because of the trust that the promotoras have with the community, after a while and after several intents, we were able to get that community involvement and that community awareness. And yet we still have several members and businesses actually that we're close to Suncor that are very hesitant to be related to us in any shape, way, or form, because Suncor actually pays them to live close to them. And so they're compensated, and some of these community members are being supported in a sense by this refinery, and that makes them not want to speak to us or have any kind of relationship with us. But it's something that we continue working on to make sure that even if they don't want to work with us, at least they understand what it is, that's how it's affecting them in the long term, and that money isn't everything, that their livelihood could actually be shortened many more years because of how short and how close they live to this refinery.
With our community where we were impoverished, one of the things that we were running across, unfortunately, was social media. It backed a lot of people in the corner. I'm a very hard person to keep quiet. So the more you push, the more I push back. And it got to a point where my name was a constant mainstay on social media, between Facebook and some of the other areas that are out there, because I kept fighting and poking and prodding. But the things that I got backlash for, it scared a lot of people. So fear factor was a definite drive for a lot of people in our neighborhood. It was the fear of being attacked, being thrown on Facebook, spending time in Facebook jail. And some of these people could be your neighbors, some people could be friends, family members, and you would never know. So it quieted a lot of people down and basically stole their voice.
Thank you, Wesley, and everyone for all your information you've been sharing. I think I can speak for everyone when I say we're really appreciative of all your experience and information. I'd be curious, just wrapping up this Q&A session, you all have so much information, and this might be a hard question, but I'd curious to wrap up if you all had like one little piece of advice you would leave everyone with today.
Educate yourselves on what fracking is and the harmful things that it can cause. The information is out there.
For me, I think one piece of advice that I would give our community is to remember that there's two types of power: organized money and organized people. And if we don't have the money, we have the people. We have to use our community. Power is in numbers. And so when we organize ourselves, we're able to advocate against these big giants that are actually hurting us. And so that we can ask for and demand environmental justice that we deserve.
And I would say, just to mention that environmental justice means not in anyone's backyard. It doesn't mean to take it from one place or to another. It means not in anyone's backyard. And then the second most important is just get involved. There's different lanes in justice work. Some people are front lines. Some people prefer to give money. Some people are good at researching. Find whatever you're good at in your everyday life and apply that to getting involved in justice work.
So what I would want to add is be brave, reach out to those scientists, even though you may be afraid they will speak a different language, but most of their careers, they've been funded, supported through public funds, and they're very happy to return and give back. But it requires most of you to give them a call, send them an email, and ask a question. And I think you'll be surprised how hard they will try to help with what they can help.
Absolutely. I would say when everybody says why, or when we can't, you say why not. The Parks Bill was born out of a conversation that was with a bunch of community activists, grassroots groups, and allied organizations who were discussing how we could improve our community, even though County Executive Rich Fitzgerald had such a stranglehold on us trying to do those protective measures. And somebody said, why don't we do something why don't we try to reintroduce legislation? They said that'll never happen because of him. And a group of people said, why not? What's the worst that's going to happen in our situation? They're going to say no. It's going to get struck down. And it did get struck down once. And then we came back. We came back stronger than ever. And it all came out of why not? Let's just give it a shot. And here we are.
Thank you all again so much for your participation. It was great to hear from each of you.